Hello, welcome to Film Scene 21. My name's Simon and I'm here to bring you real 21st century reviews of film and great television and the best ways we can enjoy those through home media. My previous reviews have all been fairly serious, so I thought I'd lighten the mood this time around and look at something a little less serious. So today I'm going to kick off a short series covering each of the films in this John Hughes 5-movie collection that I got hold of recently. Staying true to release order, we're going to kick things off with Pretty in Pink. We're going to talk about it now. Before we crack on, just to let you know there may be an element of spoiler here. The only way to avoid that is to know nothing about a film before you start watching it, but I do avoid anything major so you can rest at ease there. Also, down in the video description you will find links to my Twitter and Instagram accounts, so feel free to touch base with me there. It'd be great to hear from you. You can also leave comments and questions down below and I'll get back to you there as well. There are also jump points down below listed so you can skip to any particular part of the video you want to go back to. And also there'll be some affiliate links as well for anything that I mentioned in the video today. Those of you familiar with the work of John Hughes will be aware of the fact that in the mid-1980s he had a purple patch where certain films were very much classed as a John Hughes movie. This was generally down to the subject matter and the style of filmmaking. Even when he wasn't in the director's chair, the aesthetic was very much down to his creative input. After making contributions to films such as Mr. Mum with Michael Keaton and the Chevy Chase vehicle National Lampoon's Vacation, he turned his hand to directing, kicking things off with 16 Candles, followed by genre-defining The Breakfast Club, which, along with St Elmo's Fire, released the same year, had one journalist coin the phrase the Brat Pack, which became synonymous with actors who'd appeared in either film. I recently got hold of the Criterion collection of The Breakfast Club, so I'll be bringing you a review of that very soon. So make sure you subscribed and rung that bell so you get notified. Firstly though, we're going to be looking at some films that followed that because they've been compiled in this collection, this John Hughes 5-movie collection. It features Ferris Bueller's Day Off from 1986 and Planes, Trains and Automobiles from 1987, both been released on Blu-ray before. Then we have two films making their debut on Blu-ray, Some Kind of Wonderful from 1987 and She's Having a Baby 1988. But we're going to be kicking things off with Pretty in Pink, as it was the first of the 5 to hit cinemas around about January 1986. This is one where John Hughes is writer, executive producer, and he's handed directorial duties over to Howard Deutsch, who's helming his first feature film. Now, Pretty in Pink follows Andy Walsh, a girl from the wrong side of the tracks who struggles to fit in. She lives with her dad Jack, who's also finding it difficult to commit to getting a job, having never gotten over the fact her mum left them a while back. Not having a lot of money, Andy's resourceful and she creates her own clothes and accessories from items you'd get from the bargain rail or thrift store finds. She's got able support from friend slash boss Iona, who runs the downtown record store where Andy works, and she can always rely on best friend Phil, also known as Ducky, to always be there for her, although sometimes his undying affection for her can be a little much. She's not without other suitors. I mean, she's often having to rebut the advances of arrogant rich kid Steph, and then one day his best friend Blaine invites her out on a date. Now, is Blaine legitimately interested in Andy? Or is this just some kind of game of one-upmanship between the elite clique? And how would Ducky take the news that Andy's got a date, especially with the high school prom looming ever closer? Covering off the main players in Pretty in Pink, we have Molly Ringwald as Andy Walsh. She's previously been in the other John Hughes films, 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club. John Cryer brings us Phil Ducky Dale. He was in the very long-running TV show 2.5 Men with Charlie Sheen, and more recently can be seen in the Supergirl series playing Lex Luthor. Then we have Andrew McCarthy as Blaine McDonough. You could have seen him before in Mannequin and Class and Weekend at Bernie's. Harry Dean Stanton plays Jack Walsh, Andy's father. You've seen him before in Alien and The Straight Story and Paris, Texas, which I've done a review on, so please feel free to check that out as well. Then we have Annie Potts as Iona. You would have seen her before in Ghostbusters or Texasville, and she's done voice work for the Toy Story series. And then rounding things off is James Spader as Steph. You would have seen him before in Sex Lies Videotape, Bad Influence, Mannequin as well, and Crash, and also in the Blacklist TV series. With regards to filming locations, it was filmed generally in the California area in places such as Los Angeles, Santa Monica and South Pasadena. So to watch Pretty in Pink this time around, as I mentioned earlier, it was with the John Hughes 5 movie collection that Paramount have recently released. Obviously includes the other 4 John Hughes films I mentioned: Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, She's Having a Baby and Some Kind of Wonderful. I'll give you a close up on the front so you just have a look at that lovely cramped cover art there to squeeze them all in, and then I'll give you a close up on the back too so you can do a freeze frame. I mean, good luck reading that. So on this one I'll give you an even better close up of Pretty in Pink for you to get any details you need off of that. And then on the spine you've got the John Hughes 5 movie collection. So following on from that, we'll take a look inside the package. It is just your standard Blu-ray case, so fairly uninspiring, but you do get digital codes for all the movies, and here they are. They're just presenting these leaves, so it's pretty straightforward packaging there. But this is not about collectability or packaging. This is just about value. Getting 5 movies in one package. Over in the UK at the moment, it's about £35. I've got this for $20 off of Amazon.com. It retailed for about 40, I think, but they do seem to have a good reduction on it from time to time. So keep your eyes peeled on that. Before we go into the picture and the sound quality and the special features, I just want to let you know how I found the experience of watching Pretty in Pink on this occasion. I mean, this may contain what some might consider mild spoilers, so if that's you, you can skip to the next section. Now, the film starts well. It's got an interesting premise. Boy likes girl, other boy likes girl, girl likes other boy back. It's kind of your unrequited love meets love crosses the divide of rich and poor. It's a slightly different take on your classic love triangle. However, what is key to making half of this work at least is the relationship between Andy and Ducky, and for me that's only partially successful. It just seems to be so much of it is one-way traffic thing going on. I mean, and I beg the question, would this still be going on after such a long time? I mean, hey, if any of you have experienced just such a relationship, let me know in the comment section. And the key to making the other half work is obviously the relationship with Andy and Blaine, which is more successful. But again, it's just lacking something. I don't know if it's in the writing or perhaps the chemistry just wasn't there. Now, I've seen Pretty in Pink a number of times. I mean, I guess it's most likely due to the age I was when it was on release. And it was around the time of the John Hughes, Brat Pack era. And I remember seeking out films with those actors in them, hoping to find that same vibe that you get from, say, The Breakfast Club or Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But that was rarely the case. Now, Pretty in Pink is kind of successful in certain areas. I mean, with the dad, with Iona, and sometimes with Blaine even. But overall, it is just lacking something. Now, the soundtrack does keep things moving along nicely, and there is a genuine interest to see where the story ends up. Let's cover off the performances in Pretty in Pink now. Molly Ringwald as Andy Walsh doesn't stray too far from her performances in the previous John Hughes films. She's a little awkward at times, perhaps naturally so, being somebody caught between two worlds. There are some sweet moments, but I didn't find her as likeable as I felt the character should have been. Jon Cryer as Ducky, her friend, is supposed to be the comedy injection, but I would rather have seen him injected with something so that he could tone it down a bit. Occasionally tolerable, I just found him really annoying. Even when he's down in the dumps and you're supposed to feel sorry for him, he was just irritating.
Do I offend?
Now, you wouldn't be surprised to hear me say this, because even Jon Cryer has mentioned that his co-stars McCarthy and Ringwald found him irritating from day one. So some scenes are a tough watch. Andrew McCarthy as Blaine is pleasant enough, and he brings a sensitivity and at times a fragility to the role. Good example of trying to keep a foot in two camps at once. Although, as I said earlier, the chemistry wasn't really there, so whether that was down to writing or the performances, or perhaps even a case of miscasting somewhere along the line. Harry Dean Stanton as Jack, Andy's father, is very likeable, and he brings a warmth and a subtlety to the role, somewhat a speciality of his. There's a vulnerability too, and his scenes with Andy are very sweet for the most part, and he brings exactly what I think the character needed. James Spader was offered the role of Blaine, but he chose Steph because it's more fun to play the villain. And he is, suitably arrogant and generally unlikable. So good job, James Spader. And he seems to be enjoying himself too. A standout performance for me is Annie Potts as Iona, Andy's friend. She has a real sort of sparky sweetness to her. She's interestingly written and she pops off the screen whenever she's around. She gets to display a number of characteristics along with outfits and hairstyles in a limited number of scenes. We get to see a bold, spunky side, an entrepreneurial side, and also a tenderness too. We really get a sense of who the character is, so bravo Annie Potts. On an interesting side note, the character of Bunny, who I've not mentioned yet, but that's Steph's current squeeze and the girl who's horrible to Andy in class. She's played by Kate Vernon, who went on to play Ellen Tighe, a main supporting character in the reimagined Battlestar Galactica series. And if you keep your wits about you, you'll even spot Gina Gershon as one of her friends. What about the look and the feel of this one? Well, it's a clean looking film and it makes good use of the fashion and styles of the time. In fact, I'd say it's the one out of the five that most reflects the 80s time period it was made in. There isn't particularly any exciting camera work going on, but it serves the story well enough. The filming doesn't create any particular interest, but it doesn't labour or detract from the action either. Now, music is usually a key ingredient with John Hughes films, and Pretty in Pink is no exception. Mostly contemporary tracks, some were actually written for this. Although it does suffer slightly from an over-reliance on the post-punk new wave style that was rife at the time. But overall, I didn't think it was a home run emotionally, although there are some moments that will stay with you. However, if you're someone who's gone through some of these growing pains and experiences, then it might resonate more with you. Here's some things I found out about Pretty in Pink. The genesis of the project came about when Molly Ringwald suggested to John Hughes that he writes a film based on the psychedelic first track Pretty in Pink, which was her favourite song at the time. Ironically, the lead singer Richard Butler has since come out to say that the director slightly misunderstood the meaning of the song. Pretty in Pink was an ironic phrase used to describe a tragic girl reduced to nothingness, as in her pink nakedness. Incidentally, Molly Ringwald also pushed for the casting of Andrew McCarthy, saying he's the kind of guy I could fall in love with. He was cast despite the creative team referring to him as a twerpy guy. On the subject of how relationships turned out, and without revealing any spoilers, the original ending that was filmed is very different to what it is now. Apparently there was booing at test screenings and the studio asked for an alternative ending to be written and filmed. Despite John Hughes' reluctance, he and Howard Deutsch did just that, reshooting the final scene. Unfortunately, in the interim, Andrew McCarthy had lost a lot of weight and changed his hairstyle as he was now in a stage production, which meant the character now had to wear a wig. Not entirely successfully, I would say. Finally, some of the filming partly took place at John Marshall High School, which is the same Los Angeles high school where some of the school scenes had the Pink Ladies and the T-Birds hanging out in Greece back in 1978. So going back to the release itself, let's talk about the image, the sound and the special features, which won't take long because there aren't that many. The film was originally shot in 35mm colour film, and here it's presented in the 1.78 to 1 aspect ratio, slightly zoomed in on the theatrically shown 1.85 to 1. It's also presented here with an English DTS HD Master Audio 5.1 mix and a German and Japanese stereo variants, along with a French mono. Both the image and the sound are perfectly appropriate for this type of film, and I didn't really see any issues with either. Moving on to the special features, they provided an isolated music score in stereo, which is a nice thing to have. Obviously you get lots of gaps where there's no music, but then the tracks come in. Also, there's a couple of featurettes. You've got one called Filmmaker Focus, where you got director Howard Deutsch talking about the film. That lasts for just under 8 minutes. And there's a 12-minute featurette called The Lost Dance, the original ending, where the cast and crew talk about that original ending I've mentioned earlier. There's no footage of it because allegedly that doesn't exist anymore. And also you have a theatrical trailer. Finally, there are subtitles in English, English for the hard of hearing, German, French and Japanese. It's all about alternate versions to getting hold of Pretty in Pink. Well, in the US, the Paramount Presents line has one with a nice gatefold slipcase and some inner artwork. There is or will be a steelbook version also available. It's already available in the US and that will be coming to the UK on the 21st of June 2021. HMV in the UK have an exclusive that has a slipcase, a poster and 4 art cards. But the special features on all these releases are identical to this one. So why would you go for this one? Well, basically, this gives you a nicely bundled collection of films with the John Hughes stamp on them and the excellent value for money you get with this set. However, if you don't care too much for these other films or just prefer to own standalone releases, then you could go for that Paramount Presents line with the nice case, or the HMV exclusive with the extra goodies, or go for the steelbook if that's the way you prefer to go. So what are my final thoughts on Pretty in Pink? Well, for a romantic comedy drama, some of you out there might get that fix you need. But because of the lack of chemistry and the rather grating presence of the character Ducky, it's probably not going to be one that I rush back to anytime soon. But see it for yourself and let me know what you think. Here's the point where I like to give the film a score out of 10. You may be interested to hear what I think. So Pretty in Pink, I'm going to score it a 5 out of 10. It's not a complete failure, but it did leave me wanting in a number of areas. So there it is. If you appreciated the review, please hit that like button. The feedback really helps me out, and what's even better feedback is if you tell me your thoughts down in the comments. You can also leave any questions there and I'll get back to you, and you can contact me via Twitter and Instagram. And also please use those affiliate links if you're going to grab any of the releases mentioned today. I've got so many more reviews coming along, including the remaining 4 movies of this John Hughes collection. So subscribe if you don't want to miss any of those, and hit the bell icon too, and that way you get early notification. That's it, and thank you for joining me on this episode of Film Scene 21. My name's Simon and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye bye for now.